My family used to mock my little online hobby until they found my face on the downtown billboard. I will never forget my mother's face when she saw me on that 8-meter-high billboard right in the middle of the city center. This is the same woman who for years laughed at me at every family dinner, who called me the failure with internet dreams, who bet my sisters that my little hobby wouldn't last 6 months. There she was, standing in the middle of the sidewalk with her mouth open, phone in hand, eyes fixed on my giant face next to the logo of one of the country's most important cosmetics brands. And me, I was right behind her, waiting for the perfect moment to say, "How about it, Mom? Still think I should get a real job?" But for you to understand how I got to that moment, I need to tell you my whole story. I need you to know my family, to understand the poison I had to swallow for years, the humiliations I endured in silence, the tears I shed in my room while they toasted my sister's successes. I need you to know what it feels like to be the black sheep, the weird one, the one who never fit into the perfect mold my parents had designed for their daughters. Because this isn't just a success story, this is a story of revenge, of justice, of showing the whole world, but especially the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, that they were completely wrong about me. My name is Valentina, and I grew up in a family where success was measured in university degrees, fixed salaries, and respectable jobs. My father was an accountant at an insurance company, the kind of man who bragged about not having missed a single day of work in 32 years. My mother was an executive secretary at a law firm, and although she never finished university, she prided herself on knowing her place and on having raised 3 daughters with traditional values. My older sisters, Fernanda and Luciana, were exactly what my parents always wanted. Fernanda studied law, married a lawyer, and by 28 already had her own apartment, a brand new car, and a baby on the way. Luciana was a civil engineer, worked for a major construction company, and was engaged to an architect my parents adored because he came from a good family. And then there was me, the youngest, the different one, the one who, since childhood, preferred drawing in her notebooks over studying math, the one who dreamed of being an artist, a designer, a creator of something that didn't exist yet, the one who never understood why she had to follow a path she hadn't chosen. I remember perfectly the day everything really started to go wrong. I was 17 and had just finished high school. It was the celebration dinner, and my parents had invited the whole extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. The table was full of food, the glasses sparkled under the dining room light, and the air smelled of roasted chicken and crushing expectations. "Well, Valentina," said my father, raising his glass, "now that you've finished high school, it's time to talk about your future. Your mother and I have been thinking, and we believe business administration would be an excellent choice for you. It's a versatile degree, with good job prospects, and your uncle Roberto could get you an internship at his company when you finish." I felt my throat tighten. I looked around, everyone was watching me with those condescending smiles I knew so well, as if my future was already decided, and I just had to nod and thank them. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "I don't want to study business administration. I want to study graphic design or communications. Something related to art, to creativity." The silence that followed was so thick, you could have cut it with a knife. My mother let out a short, almost cruel laugh. "Graphic design? For what? To starve to death making little drawings?" "They're not little drawings, Mom. It's a real career. There's a lot of demand for designers, creatives, people who—" "Valentina," my father interrupted with that tone he used when he'd already made a decision and there was no room for discussion. "In this family we work in serious things. Your sisters understood that perfectly. We're not going to pay for a degree so you end up selling printed t-shirts at a flea market." Fernanda laughed. Luciana smiled smugly. My grandmother muttered something about today's youth and their crazy ideas. And I stayed there, my cheeks burning with shame, my eyes full of tears I refused to let fall. That night, locked in my room, I made a decision that would change my life forever. If my family wasn't going to support my dreams, then I would fulfill them on my own. I would study what they wanted to keep the peace, but in secret, in my free time, I would build the future I truly wanted. I had no idea how difficult that path would be, nor how much pain I would have to endure before seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I entered university to study business administration, just as my parents wanted. But from the first day, I knew I didn't belong there. Accounting classes felt like torture. The professors spoke of numbers and statistics as if they were poetry, and I could only think about the design videos I watched on YouTube at night, the Photoshop tutorials I devoured in secret, the Instagram accounts of content creators that inspired me to imagine a different life. It was precisely during that time that I discovered the world of digital content creation. One night, while procrastinating on a microeconomics assignment, I stumbled upon the channel of a girl who made videos about makeup and fashion. She had millions of subscribers, brands that paid her to promote their products, and a freedom that seemed impossible to me. I could do that, I thought. I could create something of my own. The idea planted itself in my mind like a seed that wouldn't stop growing. I started researching how YouTube worked, how people made money on Instagram, what I needed to start. I discovered that you didn't need professional equipment or a recording studio. I just needed a camera, my phone would work, good lighting, and something interesting to say. With the few savings I had from odd jobs, I bought a cheap ring light and a plastic tripod. I turned a corner of my small room into an improvised studio and recorded my first video, a basic natural makeup tutorial for beginners. It took me 3 hours to edit it. It was far from perfect, but when I uploaded it to YouTube, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine excitement, hope, the feeling of doing something that really mattered to me. The video got 47 views in the first week. Most were probably mine, refreshing the page over and over. But I didn't care. I had started. I had taken the first step. What I didn't anticipate was my family's reaction when they found out. It was Luciana who discovered it first. One Sunday we were all gathered at my parents' house for the mandatory family lunch, that sacred tradition no one could miss without facing weeks of reproach, when she took out her phone and started laughing. "Hey, have you all seen this?" she said, in that high-pitched voice she used when she was about to humiliate someone. "Our little sister is a YouTuber now. Look, she has a channel where she teaches people how to put on makeup. How cute." I felt the color drain from my face. How had she found it? I had used a different name, hadn't put my last name anywhere. "Is this for real, Valentina?" my mother asked, taking the phone from Luciana. I watched her eyes scan the screen, her expression shift from curiosity to contempt. "Is this what you do instead of studying? Recording your face for strangers to see?" "Mom, it's just a hobby." I tried to defend myself. "I do it in my free time. It doesn't affect my studies." "A hobby?" my father interjected, without looking up from his plate. "Wasting time is what it is. I hope you're not neglecting university over this nonsense." "She has 47 views, Fernanda announced after snatching the phone from my mother. 47. What a resounding success, little sister. Everyone laughed. My aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. Everyone. As if my dream was a particularly funny joke someone had told to liven up the after-dinner conversation. "Leave her alone," my grandmother said with false compassion. "All young people go through these phases. She'll get over it when she matures and understands how the real world works." I wanted to scream. I wanted to get up from the table and tell them they were wrong, that someday they would see me succeed, that they would regret every cruel word. But I didn't. I stayed silent, swallowing my tears along with the rice, pretending their mockery didn't affect me. That night I recorded another video, and another, and one more. If they thought their laughter would stop me, they were very wrong. The next 2 years were an emotional roller coaster. I still struggle to process. On one hand, I was trapped in a degree I hated, surrounded by classmates who talked about financial projections while I dreamed of color palettes and content strategies. On the other hand, my little hobby was starting to grow in ways I hadn't even anticipated. After 6 months of publishing consistently, I reached 1,000 subscribers. It might sound ridiculous by today's standards, but for me it was a huge milestone. 1,000 people who didn't know me had decided my content was worth it. 1,000 strangers who gave me more support than my own family. Of course, when I made the mistake of mentioning it at a family dinner, the response was predictable. 1,000 subscribers? Luciana mocked. And how much money have you made from that? 10 pesos? It's not just about the money. I tried to explain. It's about building a community, creating content that helps people. Oh, Valentina. My mother sighed with that condescension that made my blood boil. Always with your fantasies. When are you going to understand that life doesn't work that way? You need a real job, a fixed salary, social security. You can't live on likes and comments. Your mother is right, my father added. Look at your sisters. Fernanda is already a junior partner at her firm. Luciana just got a promotion. Meanwhile, you're still wasting time with videos nobody watches. 1,000 people watch them, I murmured, but no one heard me. Or maybe they did hear me and simply decided to ignore me. By that point, I was used to it. What my family didn't know, because they never bothered to ask, was that my channel was evolving. I had started with makeup tutorials, but I soon discovered that what I was truly passionate about was lifestyle, organization, creative productivity. I started making videos about how to organize small spaces, how to create effective morning routines, how to balance studies with personal projects. And people responded. 2 years after creating my channel, I had 25,000 subscribers. I had started receiving emails from small brands wanting to send me products in exchange for reviews. I earned my first $500 through YouTube's monetization program, and although it wasn't enough to live on, it was proof this could become something real. But most importantly, I had found my voice, my community, a group of people who understood me, who valued what I did, who sent me messages saying my videos had helped them feel better about themselves. Every time I read one of those messages, I thought of my family and their mockery, how they had made me feel small, insignificant, incapable. And those messages became fuel to keep going. Everything changed the day I graduated from university. Yes, I finished the business administration degree, not because I wanted to, but because I knew I needed that degree, as a backup, as a plan B, as proof I could play by their rules, even if I didn't believe in them. I spent 4 years studying something I didn't care about, but I did it. And when I received my diploma, I felt a strange mix of relief and resentment. The graduation party was at my parents' house. Of course. The whole extended family was invited. There were silver balloons with congratulations and a huge cake decorated with my name. My mother wouldn't stop telling everyone her youngest daughter had finally settled down and had a promising future ahead. What she didn't mention was that while she bragged about my business administration degree, I had already surpassed 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, had signed contracts with 3 different brands, and was making more money with my little hobby than she made in her lifelong job. But I didn't say anything. It still wasn't the right time. Well, Valentina, my father announced, raising his glass of wine, now that you're a graduate, it's time to talk about your professional future. I've spoken with Roberto, and he has an assistant accountant position available at his company. The salary isn't much, but it's a good start. In a few years, you could be promoted to— Dad, I interrupted him with a calm that surprised even me. I really appreciate the offer, but I'm not going to work in accounting. The silence was instant. I watched my family's faces shift from surprise to confusion, and from confusion to indignation. Excuse me, my mother said, what do you mean you're not going to work in accounting? What do you think you studied for 4 years? I studied because you forced me. But now that I'm an adult and have my degree, I'm going to dedicate myself to what I'm truly passionate about. Don't tell me you're still doing that video nonsense, Fernanda interjected disdainfully. Valentina, for God's sake, you're 22 now. When are you going to grow up? 50,000 people watch my content every week, I replied, looking her directly in the eyes. I make money from it. Not a lot yet, but enough to know this can work, and I'm going to dedicate myself to making it grow. 50,000? Luciana repeated skeptically. And what does that mean? That 50,000 teenagers with nothing better to do waste their time watching you? That's not a career, Valentina. It's a pastime. A pastime that pays me, I retorted. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses tremble. Enough. I won't allow you to throw your future away over a whim. You will accept the job your uncle is offering you, and you will stop wasting time with that nonsense. End of discussion. I took a deep breath. I felt years of frustration, humiliation, cruel words building up in my chest, like a wave about to break. No, I said. What did you say? I said no. I'm not taking that job. I'm not quitting my nonsense. And I'm not going to keep asking permission to live my own life. I got up from the table, grabbed my purse, and walked toward the door. I heard my mother calling me, my sisters murmuring among themselves, my father shouting something about ungrateful and failure, but I didn't stop. That night I slept in my small rented apartment, which I paid for with money from my videos, though they didn't know that, and for the first time in years, I felt completely free. The following months were the hardest of my life, but also the most exciting. After my rebellion at the graduation party, my family basically excommunicated me. My mother stopped calling. My sisters blocked me on social media. My father told the whole extended family I had lost my mind and that they didn't want to know anything about me until I came to my senses. At first, it hurt. It hurt much more than I was willing to admit. At night I'd find myself crying in bed, wondering if I had made a mistake, if I should call my mother and apologize, if maybe they were right and I was chasing an impossible dream. But whenever those thoughts threatened to consume me, I'd open YouTube and look at the comments on my videos. Messages from people telling me I had inspired them to pursue their own passions. Young girls thanking me for teaching them how to get organized better. Adult women telling me my videos gave them a moment of peace in their chaotic days. They were my family now. They had chosen me. And I was going to show them and everyone who had doubted me, that their faith was not in vain. I immersed myself completely in my work. I set aside everything that wasn't creating, learning, and growing. I studied YouTube algorithms until I understood them better than any subject from my university degree. I learned about SEO, audience retention, the best times to publish. I invested every peso I earned into improving my equipment. A professional camera, quality microphones, studio lights that transformed my small apartment into a filming set. I expanded my content to Instagram, where my photos about organization and productivity started attracting followers who had never heard of my YouTube channel. I opened a TikTok account and experimented with short videos that exploded in ways I hadn't anticipated. A video about how to organize a small closet reached 2 million views in a week, and my account went from 3,000 to 80,000 followers in less than a month. Brands started noticing me. No longer were they small companies offering me free products for reviews. Now they were established companies with real budgets wanting to pay me to mention their products in my videos. I said no to many offers. I quickly learned that my credibility was my most valuable asset, and I wasn't going to risk it promoting products I didn't use or believe in. But the right offers started coming. Organization brands, stationery, wellness products that aligned perfectly with my content and values. 1 year after my graduation, I had 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, 300,000 followers on Instagram, and 500,000 on TikTok. My monthly income surpassed what my sisters made at their respectable jobs, though they had no way of knowing that. And most importantly, I was happy. For the first time in my life, I woke up every morning excited about what I was going to create, the people I was going to reach, the future I was building with my own hands. It was around that time that I started hearing rumors about my family. A friend from university, who kept in touch, told me my mother had asked about me at an alumni reunion. Apparently, she wanted to know how Valentina was doing, and if anyone had information about my current life. I told her, "You seem to be doing very well," my friend said via text. "That I followed you on social media and your content was growing a lot. You should have seen her face. I don't think she had any idea you were actually doing well." I smiled reading that. A smile that tasted like victory and something bitter I didn't want to examine too closely. A few months later, it was Luciana who broke the silence. She sent me a text message one Sunday night, as if the last 2 years of ignoring me hadn't happened. Hi Valentina. Mom's birthday is next month, and we're organizing a party. We'd like you to come. Enough time has passed, don't you think? I read the message 3 times, feeling my blood boil with each word. Enough time has passed. As if the problem had been time and not decades of humiliation, mockery, and contempt. As if a simple text could erase all the pain they had caused me. I started typing an angry reply, but stopped. I took a deep breath. I thought about what I really wanted. I didn't want a fight. I didn't want drama. What I wanted was something much more satisfying. I wanted them to see with their own eyes what I had become. I wanted them to swallow every cruel word. I wanted them to know that while they discarded me, I was building an empire. Of course, I replied. I'll be there. My mother's birthday was 3 weeks later. I arrived alone, dressed in an outfit I had bought with money from a contract with a clothing brand, the kind of clothes I used to only see in store windows and dream about. I had my hair done professionally, wore impeccable makeup, and carried a designer bag that was a gift from a brand that wanted me as their ambassador. When I walked into my parents' house, I felt all eyes on me. I saw the surprise on my aunts' and uncles' faces, the confusion in my cousins' eyes, the poorly disguised shock on my sisters' faces. Valentina, my mother said, approaching with a forced smile, it's good you could make it. You look different. Thank you, Mom. Happy birthday. I hugged her briefly, feeling the stiffness of her body, the discomfort of someone who doesn't know how to act. It was strange. For years I had wanted her approval more than anything in the world, and now that she was finally looking at me with something resembling respect, I no longer cared. The party went on with the typical family dynamic: superficial conversations, passive-aggressive comments, poorly disguised as concern, constant comparisons between everyone's achievements. But I noticed something different this time. Every time I crossed paths with someone, their questions revolved around my internet work. So Valentina, my Uncle Roberto said, with that condescending tone I knew so well, are you still doing that video thing? Or did you finally get a real job? I smiled sweetly. I'm still doing the videos, Uncle. Actually, I'm doing quite well. Oh, really? And how much is quite well? Did you buy a house? A car? The question was designed to humiliate me, to prove my hobby couldn't compete with his traditional metrics of success. What he didn't know was that he had just given me the perfect opening. Well, I haven't bought a house yet, because I prefer to invest in my business, I said calmly. But I did buy my car last month, in cash. The silence was delicious. In cash? My aunt repeated, eyes wide. Yep. It's a current year model, nothing flashy, but I like it. And about the house, I'm looking at some options, but I want to wait until some pending contracts close. One of the brands I work with is planning a big campaign, and they want me as the main face. I felt my sister's eyes drilling into me from across the room. Fernanda looked like she had swallowed a lemon. Luciana had that expression she got when something didn't go according to her expectations. The main face of a campaign? My mother asked, and for the first time there was something in her voice that sounded dangerously close to genuine interest. Yes, Mom. A pretty big cosmetics brand wants me as their ambassador for next year. We're still negotiating the terms, but if everything goes well... Okay. My father interrupted with that fake smile he used when something made him uncomfortable. Enough work talk. We're here to celebrate your mother, not to hear about your ventures. The conversation changed topics, but I had planted the seed. For the rest of the night, I noticed how my family looked at me differently. No longer with mockery or condescension. It was with curiosity, with something that looked suspiciously like envy. And although part of me enjoyed every second of that feeling, another part, a smaller, more vulnerable part, I had spent years trying to silence, felt a deep sadness, because I had needed to achieve success for my own family to see me as more than a joke. I had needed to prove my worth in terms they understood. Money, cars, contracts, because my passion, my creativity, my happiness had never been enough. That night, as I drove back to my apartment, the tears I had held back for years began to fall. Not from sadness, exactly. more from something that felt like release, as if I was finally closing a chapter that had weighed on me for too long. 3 months after my mother's birthday, I got the call that would change everything. It was the marketing director of Lumiere, one of the most prestigious cosmetics brands in Latin America. We had been in talks for weeks about a possible collaboration, but nothing concrete until that moment. "Valentina," she said, with that professional yet warm voice that characterized her, "I have news I think will excite you. The campaign we mentioned finally has the green light, and we want you to be our main ambassador for the entire next year." I felt my heart race. That's incredible. What would the exact scope be? We're talking about a comprehensive campaign. Digital ads, of course, but also television, magazines, and she made a dramatic pause, billboards in the country's major cities. I almost dropped the phone. Billboards, including one in the center of your city. We believe your story of entrepreneurship and authenticity connects perfectly with our brand values, and we want that connection to be visible to everyone. I don't remember exactly what else she said. After that, my mind was too busy processing what I had just heard. My face, on a billboard, in the center of the city, where I grew up, where my family lived, where everyone who had ever mocked my little hobby could see me every time they passed by. "Valentina, are you still there?" Yes. Sorry, it's just that, it's a lot to process." "I understand perfectly. I'll send you the contract to review carefully. But Valentina, I want you to know your work has genuinely impressed us. You're not just an influencer with many followers. You're a creator who has built something authentic, and that's exactly what we want to represent." I hung up the phone and sat on my bed for what seemed like hours, staring at the wall without really seeing anything. I thought of the 17-year-old girl who had recorded her first video with a cheap tripod and a second-hand ring light, the one who cried in her room after her family mocked her dreams, the one who had promised herself that someday she would show them they were wrong. "You did it," I whispered aloud, and the words sounded strange in the silence of my apartment. "You really did it." The next 2 months were a whirlwind of activity. Photo shoots, commercial recordings, meetings with the marketing team, makeup tests, wardrobe selection. Every day brought something new, some reminder that my life had changed in ways I still found hard to believe. The most surreal part was the day of the photo shoot for the billboards. They took me to a professional studio in Mexico City with a team of more than 20 people, photographer, lighting assistants, hairstylists, makeup artists, creative directors, all working to capture the perfect image. "Valentina, I need you to think of your happiest moment," the photographer told me. "That moment when you knew you had achieved something important. I want to see that emotion in your eyes." I closed my eyes and thought of the day I reached 100,000 subscribers. The first contract I signed with a brand. The first time someone recognized me on the street and told me my videos had inspired them to change their life. And when I opened my eyes, the photographer smiled. Perfect. Exactly that. I didn't tell anyone in my family about the campaign. I wanted them to discover it for themselves. I wanted to see their faces when they came across my image without warning, without time to prepare a rehearsed reaction. The billboard was installed on a Tuesday morning. The marketing director notified me with an enthusiastic message, "Your face is now in the city center." Photo attached. I opened the image with trembling hands, and there I was, 8 meters high, with the Lumiere logo beside me, and a slogan that read, "Authentic, unique, unstoppable." My smile was huge, my eyes sparkled with the studio lights, and my makeup was impeccable while still looking natural. I stared at that photo for several minutes, processing the reality of what I was seeing. That was me. The girl who had been the joke of every family gathering, the one with the little hobby, the failure with internet dreams. And now my face dominated the downtown skyline. What happened next? I planned carefully. I admit, I could have waited for my family to stumble upon the billboard by chance, but I wanted to be present when it happened. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to savor every second of that moment. I sent my mother a message, that same Tuesday night. "Hi, Mom. Can we meet for lunch tomorrow?" "There's a new restaurant downtown I want to try. My treat." Her reply came half an hour later, probably after consulting with my father and sisters. "Of course, dear. What time?" We agreed to meet at 1 in the afternoon. The restaurant I had chosen was strategically located 2 blocks from the Billboard. The most direct route from the nearest parking lot passed right in front of it. I didn't sleep that night. I was too nervous, too excited, too full of emotions I didn't know how to name. Part of me wondered if I was doing the right thing, if this need to confront my family was healthy, or if it was just vengeance disguised as justice. But another part, the part that had been hurt, humiliated, and belittled for years, needed this moment, needed it more than anything. I arrived at the restaurant 30 minutes before the agreed time. I sat at a table by the window, from where I could see the street, and the intersection where I knew my family would have to pass. At exactly 1 o'clock, I saw my father's car turn the corner. My heart started beating so hard I could feel it in my ears. The car stopped at a traffic light, and from my position I could see all 4 of them, my father driving, my mother in the passenger seat, and my 2 sisters in the back. The light turned green. The car moved slowly, looking for a parking spot, and then I saw the exact moment my mother saw it. Her head jerked sharply to the right, following something with her gaze. Even from a distance, I could see her expression shift from confusion to shock. She said something, probably yelled, because I saw my father brake suddenly, and everyone in the car turned to look where she was looking. At the Billboard, at my 8-meter-high face, looking down at them from above. I got up from my table and left the restaurant. I crossed the street calmly, walking toward where my father's car had stopped in the middle of the lane, causing other drivers to honk in irritation. My mother was the first to get out of the car. She stood on the sidewalk, looking up with her mouth open, as if she were seeing a ghost. My sisters followed seconds later, equally stunned. My father was last, muttering something about blocking traffic as he looked for a place to park. I stopped a few meters from them, watching their reactions. It was exactly as I had imagined, better even. Valentina, my mother, was the first to see me. Her eyes went from me to the Billboard and back, as if she couldn't reconcile what she was seeing. "Hi, Mom," I said with a smile that was genuine and also a little vengeful. "I won't lie. How about it? Still think I should get a real job." The silence that followed was the most satisfying of my entire life. What happened next wasn't the explosive confrontation I might have imagined in my darkest fantasies. There were no shouts, no accusations, no dramatic reckoning where I recited every offense they had committed against me over the years. Instead, there was something more complicated, something more human. My mother started to cry. Not from sadness, at least that's what she said later. She cried from something she described as pride mixed with shame, and although part of me wanted to point out that pride had come years too late, another part, that vulnerable part that had never stopped wanting her approval, felt something loosen in my chest. My sisters didn't say anything at first. Luciana kept looking at the Billboard as if it contained the answer to a riddle she couldn't solve. Fernanda took out her phone and started searching for something, probably verifying if this was real, if I had actually achieved what they always said was impossible. My father was the hardest to read. He stayed by his car, arms crossed, jaw clenched. He didn't say anything for what seemed like several minutes, and when he finally spoke, his words surprised me. "I should have trusted you," he said. It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from him, it was more than I had expected. "You were right, and I was wrong." We had lunch together that day, as I had originally planned. But the conversation was different from any we had ever had before. For the first time, my family asked me real questions about my work. They wanted to know how YouTube worked, how I made money, how I got the contract with Lumiere. And although part of me still resented that they only showed interest now that my success was undeniable, another part recognized this was the first step towards something we might be able to rebuild. "Why didn't you ever tell us you were doing so well?" Luciana asked at some point, and the question caught me off guard with its apparent sincerity. "Why would I?" I replied. "Every time I mentioned my work, you mocked me. Why would I want to share my achievements with people who would use them to humiliate me? The silence that followed was uncomfortable, but necessary. It was the first time I verbalized, in front of them, how much their years of mockery and contempt had hurt me. "You're right," Fernanda said, and I saw how hard it was for her to admit it. "We were horrible to you. I have no excuse." "You don't," I confirmed. "But I'm also not going to carry that resentment forever. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand something. You hurt me, deeply, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen just because my success seems impressive to you now." My mother reached her hand across the table and placed it over mine. "I know, daughter, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't believe in you when you needed it most." It was the first time she had truly apologized to me, and although it wasn't enough to erase years of pain, it was a start. The following weeks were strange. The Lumiere campaign officially launched, and suddenly my face was everywhere on TV commercials, in magazines, on bus stops, on digital screens in shopping malls. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests, collaboration proposals, messages from people who recognized me from the advertising. But the most significant changes were the small ones in my relationship with my family. My mother started following me on Instagram. She left hearts on all my posts and occasionally commented things like, "What a beautiful photo, daughter," or "I'm so proud of you." They were simple gestures, perhaps insignificant to an outsider, but to me they represented a seismic shift. My sisters also made efforts, in their own way. Fernanda invited me to lunch alone, without the rest of the family, and we spent 3 hours talking about things we had never discussed. Her dissatisfaction with her job, her marriage that wasn't as perfect as it seemed, her own abandoned dreams she never had the courage to pursue. Luciana asked me for advice on how to start her own social media content, something related to her work in construction, and although I suspected her motives were more commercial than personal, I appreciated the gesture of acknowledging my expertise. My father was the slowest to adapt, but he also had his moments. One Sunday at the family dinner, which I had started attending again after years of absence, he asked me to explain that algorithm thing I mentioned so much in my videos. He listened attentively, asked questions, and at the end said something that left me speechless. "I always knew you were special, Valentina. I just didn't know how to support something. I didn't understand. That wasn't right. But I'm proud of you, of the woman you became despite us, not because of us." It has been a year since the day of the Billboard. My YouTube channel surpassed 1 million subscribers. I have a team of 3 people helping me with production and social media management. I just signed a contract to write a book about digital entrepreneurship, and I'm in talks to launch my own line of organization products. But beyond the numbers and professional achievements, what I value most is the peace I have finally found. I won't lie and say my relationship with my family is perfect now. There are still awkward moments, comments that make me grit my teeth, remnants of the past that occasionally resurface. But we have moved forward. We have built something new on the ruins of what was there before. And most importantly, I no longer need their approval to feel valid. That was the hardest lesson I had to learn. For years I measured my worth through my family's eyes. Their mockery shattered me because part of me believed they were right, that maybe I really was a failure with impossible dreams. I needed to achieve undeniable success for them to take me seriously. Yes, but in the process, I discovered something much more valuable. I learned to take myself seriously. Now I know my worth doesn't depend on billboards or million-dollar contracts. My worth comes from my ability to create, to connect with other people, to pursue my dreams even when everyone around me said it was impossible. And no one can take that away from me. If you are reading this, or listening to this video, and identify with my story, I want you to know something. Your family won't always understand your dreams. The people who are supposed to support you unconditionally will sometimes be the first to try to extinguish you. And that hurts. It hurts in a way that's hard to describe if you haven't lived it. But don't let that pain stop you. Because someday, when you've built the life you always dreamed of, you will look back and be thankful you didn't listen to them. You will be thankful you trusted yourself when no one else did. You will be thankful for every tear you shed in solitude, because each one made you stronger, more resilient, more determined to prove they were wrong. And when that day comes, because it